Zainab adjusted the silken sash at her waist, the emerald green fabric shimmering like a captured waterfall under the palace lights. Tonight, she would dance for the Sultan and his household in the famed Emerald Court, its floor inlaid with thousands of luminous pearls. Excitement fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird, but beneath the layers of silk and expectation, Zainab's heart remained a quiet pool. She danced for the applause, for the admiration, but truly, she danced for herself. Each movement a whispered story, each gesture a fleeting emotion. Tonight, her story would be one of shimmering moonlight on a desert oasis. Deep within the shadowed corridors of the palace library, Prince Jamal traced the faded script of an ancient scroll. The air smelled of dust and forgotten knowledge, a scent he preferred to the perfumed air of the court. While his elder brother, the Sultan, ruled the kingdom, Jamal ruled a different realm, the realm of history and forgotten tongues. Tonight, the court celebrated with music and dance, but Jamal found solace in the quiet whispers of the past. He hummed a mournful lullaby in a dialect so old even the court scholars couldn't decipher it. It was a song his mother had sung, a melody woven with longing and a touch of sorrow. In the Emerald Court, Zainab's performance began. The musicians struck a vibrant chord, and she moved like liquid fire, her body telling a tale of joy and celebration. The court watched, mesmerized by her grace and beauty. The Sultan nodded his approval, his wives murmured compliments, and the courtiers whispered her name. But as the music softened between songs, a different melody drifted from the shadowed library corridor, a mournful, haunting tune. Zainab paused, her body still, her ears straining to catch the unfamiliar song. It tugged at something deep within her, a forgotten memory, or perhaps a yearning for something she'd never known. She glanced towards the corridor, her eyes searching for the source of the captivating sound. The music in the Emerald Court resumed, its lively rhythm attempting to reclaim Zainab's attention. She finished her performance, the applause washing over her like a warm wave. Yet the mournful melody lingered in her mind, a persistent echo against the court's cheerful clamor. Excusing herself with a polite bow, Zainab slipped away from the admiring crowd, drawn by an invisible thread towards the library corridor. The sound grew stronger as she approached, the melancholic notes weaving a spell around her. At the end of the corridor, bathed in the soft glow of a single oil lamp, stood Prince Jamal. He held a worn book in his hands, his gaze lost in its pages, still humming the haunting lullaby. He seemed unaware of her presence, lost in a world of his own making. Zainab hesitated, unsure whether to intrude on his solitude. But the melody, the mystery surrounding it, held her captive. "Forgive me, Your Highness," Zainab said softly. Jamal startled, the book nearly slipping from his grasp. He looked up, his dark eyes widening in surprise as they met hers. I heard you singing," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "The melody in it is unlike any I've heard before." Jamal closed the book, a faint blush creeping up his cheeks. "It is an old lullaby," he explained, his voice gentle. "A song from a forgotten time." He seemed shy, almost hesitant to speak further. "It is beautiful," Zainab said, her gaze holding his. "And sad." A flicker of something unreadable passed through Jamal's eyes. "Perhaps," he agreed. "It speaks of loss, of things that can never be regained." A moment of silence hung between them, the only sound the distant echo of the court's festivities. Then Jamal offered a tentative smile. "I am Jamal," he said. "Zainab," she replied, her heart beating a little faster. The difference in their stations, the vast gulf between a prince and a dancer, seemed to dissolve in the quiet intimacy of the corridor. For a fleeting moment, they were just two souls drawn together by a shared appreciation for a forgotten melody. The next morning, a single perfect desert rose lay on Zainab's dressing table. Its petals, the color of a sunset sky, unfolded like a whispered secret. Tucked amongst the delicate thorns was a small piece of parchment, tied with a silver thread. Zainab carefully unfurled it. Written in elegant script was a single verse, a cross. "The crowded court, your grace did shine. A desert bloom beneath the moon's soft light. My heart, a captive bird, now seeks its shrine in the oasis of your gentle sight." Zainab's breath caught in her throat. The words, so simple yet so profound, resonated with the emotions she had felt upon hearing Jamal's lullaby. She recognized the sentiment in the verse, a longing that mirrored her own. She spent the day lost in thought. The desert rose a constant reminder of the prince's unexpected attention. The image of Jamal, bathed in the soft lamplight, his eyes filled with a quiet melancholy, filled her mind. That evening, Zainab selected a silk scarf, the color of moonlight on water. She carefully embroidered a single verse of her own upon it, her needle weaving a response to Jamal's poem. "The melody you sang, a haunting strain, echoes within my heart, a sweet refrain. Though worlds divide us, and our paths may stray, my spirit answers to your gentle sway." She folded the scarf and tucked it inside a small carved wooden box. Finding an opportunity during the day's bustle, she discreetly left the box near the library entrance, hoping it would find its way to Jamal's hands. The waiting was a sweet torment, a mixture of hope and uncertainty. But Zainab knew, deep in her heart, that the language of flowers and poetry had begun to weave a connection between them, a connection that transcended the walls of the palace and the constraints of their different worlds. The palace gardens, a hidden oasis within the bustling court, became their sanctuary. Beneath the silver gaze of the moon, Jamal and Zainab met. In secret, the fragrant jasmine and the soft murmur of the fountains masked their whispered conversations. They spoke of dreams and aspirations, of the burdens of duty and the yearning for freedom. Jamal confided in Zainab his dissatisfaction with courtly life, his preference for the quiet company of books and the pursuit of knowledge. Zainab, in turn, shared her passion for dance, the way it allowed her to express emotions she couldn't voice aloud. With each stolen moment, their bond deepened, their connection strengthening like the roots of an ancient tree. The gardens, once a place of quiet contemplation, now held the echoes of their shared laughter and the soft murmur of their voices, weaving a tapestry of burgeoning love under the watchful eyes of the stars. One cool evening, as the moon cast long shadows across the palace gardens, Jamal and Zainab sat by the edge of a marble fountain. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. Jamal spoke of a hidden chamber in the library, a place where forgotten scrolls and ancient texts were kept. He described the thrill of uncovering lost histories, the quiet satisfaction of deciphering forgotten languages. He confessed his dream of establishing a school where knowledge would be freely shared, a place where scholars and artists could gather and learn from one another. Zainab listened intently, her heart swelling with admiration for his passion and his gentle spirit. She saw a depth in him that the court overlooked, a quiet strength hidden beneath his scholarly demeanor. She, too, shared a secret desire, a yearning to escape the confines of the court and create a life where her art could flourish freely. Unburdened by the expectations of the Sultan and his entourage, "I long for a place where I can dance for the pure joy of it," she confessed, her voice soft as the falling water. "A place where every movement is a prayer, a story whispered to the wind." Jamal's gaze met hers, his dark eyes filled with understanding. He reached out and gently took her hand, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. "Perhaps, one day," he murmured, "we can create such a place together." The air crackled with unspoken emotions. The moonlight illuminated Zainab's face, highlighting the delicate curve of her cheekbones and the soft glow in her eyes. Jamal leaned closer, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. He saw not just a dancer, but a kindred spirit, a woman whose heart echoed his own yearning for freedom and authenticity. Overcome by the intimacy of the moment, Jamal gently cupped Zainab's face in his hands. His thumb brushed against her cheek, sending a wave of warmth through her body. Their eyes locked, and in that shared gaze, a silent understanding passed between them. It was a moment suspended in time, a world away from the intrigues and expectations of the court. Then, slowly, tenderly, Jamal leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was soft and fleeting, a whisper of shared longing and unspoken promises. It was a seal upon their secret bond, a confirmation of the love that had blossomed in the shadowed corners of the palace and beneath the watchful gaze of the moon. When they finally drew apart, the world seemed to shimmer around them, transformed. By the magic of their first shared kiss, Sultana Adila, the Sultan's favorite wife, surveyed the bustling courtyard from her private balcony. Her fingers, adorned with rings of glittering emeralds and rubies, tapped impatiently against the polished railing. She was a woman accustomed to power, a woman whose whispers could sway the Sultan's decisions and shape the fate of the kingdom. Beneath her carefully crafted mask of serenity, ambition burned like a hidden fire. Her son, still a child, was not the heir to the throne. Prince Jamal, the Sultan's younger brother, stood in his way, and Sultana Adila had a plan to remove that obstacle, a plan that would secure her son's future and cement her own position as the true power behind the throne. She had observed Jamal's growing interest in the dancer, Zainab. A foolish infatuation, she thought, a distraction that could be easily exploited. A foreign princess had arrived, seeking the Sultan's favor and a potential alliance. Princess Amara was wealthy, powerful, and most importantly, ambitious. A perfect match for Jamal, Adila mused, a marriage that would tie him to foreign interests and remove him from the line of succession. With Jamal married to a foreign princess, the path to the throne would be clear for her own son. Adila summoned her most trusted advisor, a wizened old woman named Zara, whose eyes held the secrets of countless courtly intrigues. "Zara," Adila began, her voice smooth as silk, "I have a task for you, a delicate matter that requires discretion and persuasion." Zara bowed her head, her eyes glinting with anticipation. "Your wishes are my command, Sultana." Adila outlined her plan, her words precise and calculated. Jamal would be married to Princess Amara, whether he liked it or not. Zainab, the dancer, would be dealt with. A public humiliation, perhaps, something to shatter Jamal's foolish infatuation and demonstrate the consequences of defying Adila's will. And if Jamal proved resistant, Adila had other methods, darker methods, to ensure her plan succeeded. She could arrange for Zainab to be sold to a distant lord, a fate worse than exile. The threat alone, Adila knew, would be enough to bring Jamal to heel. A flicker of a cruel smile played on her lips. The pieces were in place, the game had begun, and Sultana Adila intended to win. Zainab was summoned to the Emerald Court, ostensibly to perform for a visiting dignitary. She arrived, dressed in her finest silks, her heart filled with a quiet anticipation. She had not seen Jamal since their stolen kiss in the gardens, but the memory of his touch lingered on her skin like a warm embrace. As she entered the court, however, she sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The usual murmur of polite conversation had been replaced by a tense silence. The courtiers' gazes, usually filled with admiration, now held a mixture of curiosity and something else. Pity. As she reached the center of the court, a servant tripped, seemingly by accident, spilling a pitcher of wine over Zainab's elaborate gown. The crimson liquid spread across the pale silk, staining it like a spreading bruise. A gasp rippled through the assembled crowd. Zainab stood frozen, humiliated and confused. Then a voice, sharp and cold, cut through the silence. "How clumsy," Sultana Adila said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Such a shame to ruin such a beautiful gown. Perhaps the dancer should be more careful. Or perhaps," she continued, her voice hardening, "she is not fit to perform in the presence of such esteemed guests." A wave of shame washed over Zainab. She knew the accident was no accident at all. It was a deliberate act of humiliation, orchestrated by the Sultana. She lifted her chin, refusing to let the tears that stung her eyes fall. She would not give Adila the satisfaction of seeing her break. Later that evening, as Zainab sat alone in her chambers, trying to scrub the wine stain from her ruined gown, Zara, the Sultana's advisor, arrived. The old woman's eyes held, a cold, calculating glint. "The Sultana wishes to speak with you," Zara said, her voice devoid of warmth. Zainab followed Zara to Adila's private chambers, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and defiance. The Sultana sat on a plush divan, her fingers toying with a strand of pearls. She looked up as Zainab entered, her gaze sharp and piercing. "You have caught the attention of Prince Jamal," Adila said, her voice smooth as velvet, yet laced with a chilling undertone. "A foolish infatuation, nothing more. He is to marry Princess Amara. This alliance is crucial for the kingdom, and nothing will stand in its way." Zainab's breath caught in her throat. Jamal marrying another? The thought was like a sharp knife twisting in her heart. "I advise you to forget about the prince," Adila continued, her voice hardening. "End this dalliance before it goes any further." "My feelings for Prince Jamal are my own," Zainab replied, her voice trembling but firm. Adila's eyes narrowed. "Your feelings," she scoffed. "You are a dancer, nothing more. You have no right to aspire to the prince's affections. If you do not heed my warning, I will see to it that you are sold to a distant lord. A life of servitude awaits you, far from this palace, far from Jamal. Consider this your final warning." Zainab left the Sultana's chambers, her body trembling with anger and fear. Adila's threat hung over her like a dark cloud, a constant reminder of the danger she faced. She was trapped between her love for Jamal and the Sultana's ruthless ambition. A choice had to be made, a choice that could change her life forever. Jamal paced the length of his library, the scent of aged parchment and leather doing little to soothe his troubled mind. Adila's words echoed in his ears, a chilling reminder of the power she wielded. Marry Princess Amara, secure his family's position, and ensure the stability of the kingdom. Or defy her, risk Zainab's safety, and face the unknown consequences of his rebellion. He had always preferred the quiet solitude of his books, the comfort of history and knowledge. Now he was thrust into a role he had never sought, forced to make a choice that could shatter his own happiness and the life of the woman he loved. He thought of Zainab, her radiant smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her dreams, the memory of their stolen kiss in the garden, the brief moment of shared joy and connection, filled him with a longing so intense it ached. He could not imagine a life without her, a future where her laughter did not grace the halls of his heart. But how could he protect her from Adila's wrath? How could he defy the woman who held the strings of power in her manicured hands? He sought solace in the ancient texts, searching for an answer, a solution, a way out of the impossible situation he found himself in. But the words on the parchment blurred before his eyes, offering no guidance, no comfort. He felt trapped, caught in a web of courtly intrigue and familial obligation. Later that evening, Jamal found Zainab in the palace gardens, sitting by their usual fountain. The moonlight illuminated her face, but her eyes, usually bright and full of life, were shadowed with sadness. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his. He told her of Adila's ultimatum, of the arranged marriage, of the threat that hung over her head. Zainab listened in silence, her hand tightening around his. When he finished speaking, she looked at him, her gaze steady and resolute. "Do not sacrifice your happiness for me, Jamal," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Do not let her win. Choose your own path. Choose your own destiny." Tears welled up in Jamal's eyes. He had expected pleas, arguments, perhaps even anger. But Zainab's selflessness, her willingness to sacrifice her own happiness for his, filled him with a renewed determination. He realized that true love was not about possession or control, but about setting the other free, about empowering them to choose their own path, even if that path led away from him. "I cannot lose you, Zainab," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You will not lose me," she replied, her fingers tracing the lines of his hand. "Even if we are separated by distance, our hearts will remain connected. Our love will find a way." Her words, spoken with such conviction, ignited a spark of hope in Jamal's heart. He knew in that moment that he could not give in to Adila's demands. He had to find a way to defy her, to protect Zainab, and to forge a future where their love could flourish, free from the shadows of the court and the weight of its expectations. Jamal sought refuge in the familiar silence of the palace library. The weight of Adila's threat pressed heavily upon him, a suffocating blanket of fear and uncertainty. He could not bear the thought of Zainab being sold, of her spirit being crushed under the weight of servitude. He had to find a way to protect her, a way to defy Adila's iron will. He wandered through the towering shelves, his fingers trailing across the spines of ancient books. He felt a strange pull towards the hidden chamber, the place where the oldest and most forgotten texts were kept. He had spent countless hours there as a child, poring over dusty scrolls and deciphering forgotten languages. Perhaps, within those forgotten words, he could find an answer, a solution, a key to unlock the seemingly impossible situation he faced. He lit a lamp, its flickering flame casting long shadows across the chamber walls. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, the smell of forgotten knowledge. He began to search, pulling down scrolls and opening ancient tomes, his eyes scanning the faded script for any hint of a solution. He remembered the lullaby, the mournful melody he had sung the night he first met Zainab. It was a song his mother had taught him, a song in a dialect so old even the court scholars could not understand it. He had always assumed it was simply a lullaby, a song to soothe a child's fears. But now a nagging question tugged at his mind. Why would his mother, a woman of the court, know a song in such an ancient tongue? He searched for any mention of the lullaby, any clue to its origins. He found nothing, the silence of the ancient texts mocking his desperation. Hours passed, and the lamp burned low, casting a ghostly glow across the chamber. Just as he was about to give up, his hand brushed against a small, leather-bound book tucked away in the furthest corner of a shelf. It was unlike any other book. In the library, its cover plain and unadorned. He pulled it down, his heart beating with a strange anticipation. He opened the book, its pages brittle with age, and began to read. The script was unfamiliar, the letters twisting and turning like ancient vines. But as he deciphered the words, a sense of unease settled over him. The book spoke of prophecies, of hidden truths, of secrets buried deep within the heart of the kingdom. He read of twins, born under a dark star, one destined to rule, the other to overthrow. He read of a lullaby, a key to a hidden identity, a melody that held the power to unlock a forgotten destiny. As he read on, the pieces began to fall into place. The lullaby, the secret chamber, the forgotten prophecy, it all pointed to a truth he had never dared to imagine, a truth that could change everything. Jamal stared at the faded script, his heart pounding in his chest. The prophecy spoke of twin princes, born under a blood-red moon. The firstborn, it declared, was destined to overthrow the Sultan, plunging the kingdom into chaos. A chilling fear gripped him. He remembered his mother's lullaby, the mournful melody in the extinct dialect. He had always believed he was the younger brother born after the Sultan, but what if the prophecy spoke of him? What if he was the firstborn, the hidden threat to his brother's rule? He reread the passage, tracing the ancient symbols with trembling fingers. The prophecy described a specific birthmark, a crescent moon-shaped mark hidden beneath the firstborn's left shoulder blade. Jamal hesitated, his hand hovering over his shoulder. He had never seen such a mark, but he had never looked. He quickly unfastened his tunic, his breath catching in his throat as he saw it. There, beneath his shoulder blade, faint but unmistakable, was the crescent moon, a pale echo of the blood-red moon described in the prophecy. The truth hit him with the force of a physical blow. He was the firstborn, the hidden prince, the prophesied threat to his brother's throne. The lullaby, the song his mother had sung, was not just a lullaby. It was a key, a secret code, a way to identify him, should the need ever arise. He understood now why he had been raised in the shadows, why his existence had been kept secret from the court. He was a danger, a threat, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. He sank to the floor, the weight of the revelation crushing him. He had always been content in his quiet world of books and ancient lore. He had never desired power, never sought the throne. And yet, fate, it seemed, had other plans for him. He was the firstborn, the rightful heir, the prophesied usurper. He closed his eyes, his mind reeling with the implications of this newfound knowledge. What was he to do? Claim the throne that was rightfully his, fulfilling the prophecy and plunging the kingdom into chaos? Or remain hidden, protecting his brother and the kingdom, but sacrificing his own birthright? The choice was a heavy burden, a weight that threatened to crush him beneath its immense pressure. Jamal sought an audience with the Sultan. It was a request he had never made before, preferring the quiet solitude of his library to the bustling activity of the court. But the secret he carried, the weight of the prophecy, compelled him to seek out his brother. He found the Sultan in his private chambers, overlooking the city. The Sultan, a man burdened by the weight of his crown, looked weary, his eyes shadowed with a fatigue Jamal had never noticed before. "Jamal," the Sultan said, a flicker of surprise in his voice. "What brings you here?" Jamal hesitated, the words catching in his throat. He held the ancient book in his hands, its leather cover worn smooth with age. He held out the book to his brother. I believe this may explain some things." The Sultan took the book, his brow furrowed in confusion. He opened it, his eyes scanning the faded script. As he read, his expression changed, shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally to a quiet understanding. He closed the book, his gaze meeting Jamal's. "Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "In the hidden chamber of the library," Jamal replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. "The chamber where the forgotten texts are kept." The Sultan sighed, a deep, weary sound. He gestured for Jamal to sit. "There are things you do not know, Jamal," he began, his voice heavy with unspoken burdens, things that have been kept secret for too long. He then told Jamal the story of their birth, the story of the prophecy, the story of the difficult choice their parents had made. He confirmed the truth Jamal had discovered in the ancient text. He was the firstborn, The hidden prince, the prophesied threat to the throne, our mother, fearing for your life and the stability of the kingdom, made the difficult decision to conceal your true identity, the Sultan explained, his voice filled with a mixture of sadness and regret. She taught you the lullaby, the song in the ancient tongue as a key, a way to identify you should the need ever arise. Jamal listened in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of his family's secret. He understood now why he had been raised in the shadows, why his existence had been kept hidden from the court. He was not just Jamal, the bookish prince, the Sultan's younger brother. He was something more, something different. He was the firstborn, the rightful heir, the hidden prince, whose very existence threatened to unravel the fabric of the kingdom. The weight of his birthright settled upon Jamal like a heavy cloak. He was the firstborn, the rightful heir, the one prophesied to overthrow the Sultan. The library, his sanctuary of quiet contemplation, now felt like a prison, the ancient texts whispering accusations of destiny and duty. He wandered the shadowed aisles, the scent of aged parchment and leather no longer a comfort, but a constant reminder of the secret he carried. He could claim the throne. The prophecy, the lullaby, the Sultan's own confession, all pointed to his right to rule. The court, so enamored with outward appearances and whispered rumors, would likely embrace him. The hidden prince, the rightful heir, returned from the shadows. He imagined the power he could wield, the changes he could enact. He could establish the school he had always dreamed of, a place where knowledge would be freely shared, where scholars and artists could thrive. He could protect Zainab, shielding her from Adila's machinations, ensuring her safety and happiness. But the thought of seizing power, of overthrowing his brother, filled him with unease. He had never desired the throne, never craved the burden of leadership. He preferred the quiet pursuit of knowledge, the solace of ancient texts, the gentle whisper of history unfolding. He looked at his hands, strong but uncalloused, hands accustomed to turning pages, not wielding a sword. Were these the hands of a king? And what of the prophecy? Was he destined to fulfill its grim prediction, to become the usurper, the bringer of chaos? He had witnessed the burden of rule upon his brother, the weight of a kingdom resting upon his shoulders. Was that a burden he truly wanted to bear? He thought of Zainab, her unwavering belief in him, her encouragement to choose his own path. Would claiming the throne truly be his own choice, or would it be a surrender to destiny, a fulfillment of a prophecy he did not understand? He closed his eyes, the image of Zainab's face, her eyes filled with love and trust, filling his mind. He knew deep in his heart that true power did not lie in a crown or a throne, but in the freedom to choose one's own destiny, to forge one's own path, regardless of what fate or prophecy might dictate. The answer, he realized, lay not in the ancient texts or the whispers of the court, but within himself, within the quiet whispers of his own heart. The royal council chamber, a grand hall adorned with tapestries depicting the kingdom's history, buzzed with anticipation. The council members, a mix of wizened advisors, powerful nobles and religious leaders, sat in their designated seats, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The Sultan sat upon his elevated throne, his expression grave. Beside him stood Jamal, holding the ancient book that held the secret of his birth and the prophecy that had shadowed his life. Sultana Adila, her face pale but composed, sat amongst the council members, her eyes fixed on Jamal, a flicker of unease in their depths. Jamal stepped forward, the ancient book held firmly in his hands. He addressed the council, his voice clear and steady despite the weight of the moment. He spoke of the prophecy, the hidden truth of his birth, the lullaby that had been both a comfort and a key to his hidden identity. He explained how he had been raised in the shadows, his true birthright, concealed to protect the kingdom from the foretold chaos. He spoke of Adila's scheme, her plan to marry him to Princess Amara, her threats against Zainab, her ambition to secure the throne for her own son. He opened the ancient book, reading aloud the prophecy that spoke of twin princes, one destined to rule, the other to overthrow. He showed the council the crescent moon birthmark beneath his shoulder blade, the mark that identified him as the firstborn, the prophesied usurper. A murmur rippled through the assembled council members, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Sultana Adila's composure faltered, a bead of sweat trickling down her temple. Jamal then revealed Adila's manipulations, her attempts to control his destiny, her threats against Zainab. He spoke of her ambition, her desire for power, her willingness to sacrifice anyone, even her own family, to achieve her goals. He presented the council with evidence of her schemes, letters and whispered conversations documented by loyal servants who had grown weary of her machinations. The council members listened intently, their expressions growing increasingly grim. The weight of Jamal's words, the undeniable truth of his birthright and Adila's treachery, hung heavy in the air. When he finished speaking, a heavy silence descended upon the chamber. Then the eldest council member, a wizened old man, with eyes that had seen generations of courtly intrigue, rose to his feet. "Prince Jamal," he said, his voice resonant with authority, "you have presented us with a grave truth, a truth that has been hidden for far too long. Your birthright, your claim to the throne cannot be denied. And yet," he continued, his gaze shifting to Adila, "the actions of Sultana Adila, her deceit and her ambition, cannot be ignored." He turned back to Jamal. "The council will deliberate on this matter. We will weigh the prophecy, the evidence of treachery, and the best interests of the kingdom. Justice will be served." The council members withdrew to a private chamber to deliberate, leaving Jamal and the Sultan alone in the grand hall. The Sultan rose from his throne and approached his brother. He placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, his gaze filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "Thank you, Jamal," he said, his voice low and sincere, "for your courage, for your honesty, for protecting our kingdom from the shadows that threaten to consume it." Jamal nodded, the weight of his burden momentarily lifted by his brother's words. He knew that the council's judgment would determine his fate, the fate of Adila, and the future of the kingdom. He waited, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation for the council's decision. The royal council returned, their faces etched with the gravity of their decision. The eldest council member addressed the court, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "We have deliberated on the matter of Prince Jamal's birthright and the accusations against Sultana Adila. We find the evidence of the Sultana's treachery to be undeniable. Her ambition and her disregard for the well-being of the kingdom have brought us to the brink of chaos." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled court. "Sultana Adila is hereby stripped of her title and her power. She will be confined to her quarters, and her future will be determined by the Sultan." Adila, her face ashen, remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. The flicker of ambition that had once burned so brightly in her eyes was now extinguished, replaced by a cold, empty despair. The eldest council member then turned to Jamal. "Prince Jamal," he said, "you are the rightful heir to the throne. The prophecy speaks true. The choice is yours. Claim your birthright and rule the kingdom, or renounce your claim and choose your own path." Jamal took a deep breath, the weight of the kingdom resting upon his shoulders. He looked at his brother, the Sultan, whose face held a mixture of apprehension and hope. He thought of Zainab, her words of encouragement echoing in his ears. He had spent his life in the shadows, seeking knowledge, not power. He had found love, a love that transcended the walls of the palace and the constraints of duty. He knew In his heart, the true happiness lay not in a crown or a throne, but in the freedom to choose his own destiny. "I renounce my claim to the throne," Jamal declared, his voice clear and strong. "I choose love over power, knowledge over dominion. I choose freedom." A gasp rippled through the court. The Sultan, his face etched with relief, stepped forward and embraced his brother. "Thank you, Jamal," he whispered. "You have saved us all." Later that night, under the cover of darkness, Jamal and Zainab slipped out of the palace. The Sultan, grateful for Jamal's sacrifice, had provided them with a chest filled with gold and a collection of Jamal's most treasured books. He had also given them his blessing, a promise of protection from Adila's lingering influence. They rode through the night, leaving the opulent Emerald Court and the intrigues of the palace behind. They rode towards the rising sun, towards a new beginning, a future where their love could flourish, free from the shadows of the court and the weight of its expectations. They carried with them not the burden of a kingdom, but the promise of a shared dream, a dream of a school where knowledge and art would intertwine, a place where they could build a life together, a life filled with love, learning, and the quiet joy of shared passions. Far from the Emerald Court, in a quiet valley nestled between rolling hills, Jamal and Zainab began their new life. They purchased a small, sturdy house with a sun-drenched courtyard. The air, free from the heavy perfumes of the palace, smelled of wildflowers and the distant sea. The silence, unbroken by courtly whispers and the rustling of silks, was a balm to their souls. They unpacked the chest of books, the familiar scent of aged parchment and leather filling their new home. These were not just books. They were companions, teachers, windows into worlds beyond their own. Jamal, with Zainab's help, began to transform their courtyard into a school. He arranged the books on simple wooden shelves, creating a library open to the sky. He purchased instruments, lutes, drums, flutes, and hung them on the walls, their polished surfaces gleaming in the sunlight. Zainab, her spirit renewed by the freedom of their new life, began to teach dance in the courtyard, her movements as fluid and graceful as the flowing river nearby. Word of their school spread through the valley, attracting students of all ages and backgrounds. Shepherds and farmers, merchants and artisans, all came to learn from the exiled prince and the celebrated dancer. Jamal taught history and philosophy, poetry and music, sharing his vast knowledge with a passion that ignited a thirst for learning in his students. Zainab taught the language of dance, the art of expressing emotions through movement, the power of storytelling through gesture and grace. The courtyard, once a quiet space, now buzzed with activity, filled with the sounds of music and laughter, the rhythm of drums, and the graceful movements of dancing feet. They lived simply, their days filled with purpose and joy. They cooked their meals together, sharing stories and laughter over bowls of steaming stew. They read aloud from their favorite books, their voices intertwining in the quiet intimacy of their home. They walked hand in hand through the valley, exploring the hidden trails and discovering the secrets of the land. The gold the Sultan had given them was used sparingly, carefully invested in the school and the needs of their growing community. They had traded the opulence of the palace for the richness of a life lived authentically, a life filled with purpose, passion, and the unwavering support of each other. The court, with its whispers and intrigues, felt like a distant dream, a world they had left behind without regret. Here, in this quiet valley, they had found their true home, a place where their love could flourish, unburdened by the expectations of the world and the shadows of the past. Back in the Emerald Court, life had changed. The Sultan, relieved of the burden of his secret and Adila's manipulative influence, began to reshape his court. He promoted honest advisors and rewarded those who valued knowledge and justice. He spent more time in the library, rediscovering the joy of learning that he had neglected during the years of Adila's subtle control. He even began to take an interest in the music and poetry that had once been Jamal's sole domain. The court, once a breeding ground for whispers and intrigue, slowly transformed into a place of genuine learning and artistic expression. The Sultan, wiser and more content, ruled with a newfound sense of purpose, his decisions guided by wisdom and compassion, not by fear or manipulation. News of Jamal and Zainab's school reached the palace, carried on the whispers of traveling merchants and wandering scholars. The Sultan smiled when he heard these stories, his heart filled with pride for his brother and the woman he loved. He knew they had found their true calling, a path far more fulfilling than the gilded cage of the court. He sent them occasional messages, words of encouragement and support, along with gifts of books and musical instruments. He knew that though they were separated by distance, their hearts remained connected by a bond of love and shared purpose. Over time, the story of Jamal and Zainab became a legend whispered throughout the kingdom. A tale of a prince who chose love over power, a dancer who defied a sultana's wrath, and a school where knowledge and art blossomed in a quiet valley far from the intrigues of the court. Their love, once a secret hidden in the shadows of the palace, became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of courage, kindness, and the unwavering pursuit of one's true destiny. Their school flourished, attracting students from far and wide, spreading knowledge and joy throughout the land. The music and poetry that had once filled the quiet corridors of the palace library now echoed through the valley, carried on the wind, a testament to the enduring power of love and the transformative power of art.